My name is Klaus Busse. I'm the head of design for Maserati. Today I want to take a look with you at what defined the design of the MC20. And I thought the best way to do this is with a quick sketch. As you can imagine, any car really, it starts all with the proportion. And the first thing we always draw on any car, of course, are the wheels to define the wheelbase, how far the wheels are spaced. It also helps defining cabin space later on the car. But then what is extremely important is what we call the Y0 line, which is the center line of the car. We call it zero because, or Y0, because the Y helps us define the part of the grid in the three coordinates, Z becoming the height and Y becoming the width. And this line is absolutely important, not only to define the space of the car, or the cabin I should say, and the engine compartment, but it's super important for the aerodynamic, because up here is where we have the apex of that line, and here's where we have the maximum roof height also for the cabin space, for the passenger and the driver. But very important to get this line right together with the guys in aerodynamics to be able to only get away with a fixed spoiler, because if we nail the line as we did on this car, you don't need to have a movable spoiler, you can just work with a fixed spoiler. Of course, to complete the proportion of the car, you need to know, the DLO as we call it. It's called daylight opening. DLO is kind of a designer term, I guess, and it defines, the glass area of the car. Of course, back here we already have the glass for the for the mid-engine. We need rear lights, we have front lights. But where it's becoming really interesting is when we talk about the functional aspects of this car. This part up here, in inside view, this is all you're going to see, defines the intercooler opening that supplies all the cooling for the mid-engine in the back. So what you see here in the side view is it's barely noticeable. And what is very important for us is that we didn't want to do what we see so much in the competitive segment, is that the car is almost designed around air intakes. For us it was important that we have a minimum amount of graphical details and really focus on the sculpture of the car. And the sculpture of the car is pretty much happening in the upper part of the car. We define reflections, bone lines, and they help us to really create almost like this Italian sculpture in the upper part of the car. I'm going to draw a quick section here so you get an idea. So it's a very, very round, very beautiful surface. But that surface then on the lower part of the car meets basically its opposite, which is like raw engineering surfaces. What I mean with that is all this down here is carbon fiber, and all this is designed to extract air from the front wheel and to bring in air for the rear wheel. So this is a super functional area, very much led by aerodynamics, very much designed on the computer. So we're bringing these two worlds together, the upper part almost being hand sculpted, very, very voluptuous Italian design, if you want to say so. And on the bottom, we bring in these kind of raw engineering surfaces that really define the functionality and the performance of the car. The same is true also for the back, because this point right here defines the end of the ground effect floor. So again, all this is carbon fiber, and again, super important for the aerodynamics. On the front, similar situation, of course, a lot of aerodynamic devices down here, and also beautifully bringing together the lower engineering part of the car with that upper part of the car, the sculpture. To get away with this kind of pure approach to design and to avoid this kind of distraction of unnecessary graphic, unnecessary air intakes, we focused on a few very iconic elements to give this car character, whether it's the Trident on that typical triangular C-post, but also the wheels. For the wheels, we were looking into our archives and really discussed and studied which wheels in the past we used really stand for Maserati and iconic and can only be used for this brand. And we came up with these Trident wheels that basically are a stylized form of the Trident. You see those 3 peaks here. And so we designed this 3-spoke wheel designed by, or inspired, I should say, inspired by wheels of the past out of the Gran Turismo portfolio, or also used on the very beautiful birdcage concept that was done quite a while ago. And the same, of course, is true for the front wheel. Again, these very, very beautiful, iconic wheels. And you can see I can sketch them very quick because, you know, they're very, very clear in design with these repeating Trident feel. So let's take a look at the front of the MC20 and what makes it unique, what went through our head when we designed this very, very important part of the car, as you can imagine. To no surprise, you find what would be called a grille in the front part of the car. I prefer the term frame because it really is there to frame what I think is one of the most iconic elements in the automotive industry, which is the Trident, the Trident, the Maserati Trident. And so the frame is really helping us to create attention around this very important icon for us. The overall proportion, of course, are very much driven by the fact that we have a super sports car, so very low. The car is just a touch over 120 tall. That allows us to get a really nice cabin space. But I want to highlight a quick thing here on the front because, like the side, it's all about reducing noise, avoiding distraction. Because all I want you to take away is the beautiful proportion of the car and the Maserati Trident and this frame. So what you see here on the, as soon as you go outboard of the Trident, of course we have big air intakes for those massive intercoolers that help cooling down the system. But other than that, we keep it very, very calm. Also, the car itself, the body of the car is following that recipe that we spoke about on the side of the car, meaning that the upper part of the car, I'm going to draw a section through here, is a very, very clean hand-sculpted area. And then the lower part, you again have this very, very raw engineering surfaces, exposing this beautiful carbon fiber that you then see connecting with the carbon fiber part of the side of the vehicle, and then also eventually on the rear. Now, this section that I was just drawing here is basically driven by a very simple fact. We needed to get air out of the grill compartment to help with the flow of the intercooler. So what we did is we scooped out these elements here, and they are creating this really cool element that then helps flow into the body of the car. But really keeping it to a minimum in terms of adding openings to the car, really only what was the minimum required. But it does add some interesting shape to the hood. It also then connects us with the wheel arches. You see here our wheel arches, where they peak, they are a little bit flat. Often what you see is like very trapezoidal, very wheel arches with a strong peak. And what we like to do at Maserati to keep them more constructed looking, and that connects us also with some of the great Maserati sports cars of the past, like the MC12, but also the birdcage concept that we have shown in years past. So let's take a look at the rear end of the car, the car you probably see, the part of the car you probably see most when you're in traffic. This car is incredibly proportioned, which of course is a dream for us designers. It is about 2 meters wide, 195 to be precise, without mirrors. So with the mirrors it actually goes beyond 2 meters. And that allows us to create this beautiful stance, this dramatic proportion on the road. But to further emphasize it, we actually used the rear lights and made them super slim using really state-of-the-art technology. And using this graphic element further enhances the width of the car on the road. So you're physically wide already, but on top of that, you get the graphic impact of the lights to really create this amazing stance of the car. Now, Here in the rear view, again, I want to revisit those sections we talked about on the front view. This unusual but very typical for Maserati sections for the wheel arch. Not the typical peak that you get on a lot of cars, but something that is more Maserati. You know this section probably already from the MC12, the spiritual predecessor of this car, but also from the birdcage concept. As you can imagine, the rear is all about the business part of the car. So here we are taking that veil, that cloth, the upper part of the car, which is this kind of beautiful sculpted part. We lift it even further and really expose the business part of the car. This down here is all about engineering performance, whether it is dramatic cooling elements, whether it is those massive exhaust pipes. It all is about functionality in this area of the car. Down here, of course, we have the arrival point of the ground effect floor. So this is, again, a very super important part of the car. And all these areas are actually more designed by engineers than by us at Centro Stile. And that was okay, because we really appreciated this collaboration with the engineers on this functional part of the car. And I'm gonna shade it slightly so you can see this is all going to be in carbon fiber on the car, and it's going to give it a really, really dramatic look. Now, another cool feature on this car is, I'm just going to put in the engine cover here, the roof line. One quick thing maybe, what is cool is this car also has an additional rear view camera. It's about in this position here, and that will feed an additional image on the rear view camera inside the cabin, and it will provide you with an unobstructed view of the rear of the car, what's behind you. And that allows us in return to be more free with the elements we had to use on the cover, because we needed to add a couple of elements to help with air circulation and to help airflow. So what we were able to do, we did a stylized Trident for these cooling elements. And that was a really cool feature, because at the beginning we were very concerned about these cooling slots we needed to use, because it made us it felt like something we had seen before when there were just simple lines. But then the breakthrough really came when we realized the idea that we can do a stylized Trident using these slots. So it's a really abstract way to introduce the Maserati Trident on the rear of the car. And as a matter of fact, there's no additional Trident on the rear of the car, just the very familiar Maserati script on the edge of the car. So I really like ending on the rear view of the car, because it really shows these two worlds coming together, the design world, the sculpture world, and the raw engineering world. And it also represents the two teams that together developed this car, whether it is the team of designers, interior, exterior sculptors at Centro Stile, of which I am only one of many, but also this magnificent team of engineers in Modena. And together we were able to create the MC20 in perfect respect and in a perfect symbiosis.